Okay, guys, welcome this week to Terrier Talk, where we're going to talk about whether you can actually solve reactivity or not. Now, there's many a social media video or reel or online course sales page that will say to you, do these 3 simple things and it will completely solve your dog's reactivity. And for the most part, if I'm honest, it's not true. There are always more factors to a dog's reactivity than can be addressed with, let's say, 1 or 2 very simple little things. That doesn't mean to say that you can't make massive improvements with 1 or 2 simple little things, though. And I think that's the definition that we need to be making, really, as dog trainers. We need to be saying, yes, I can help you a lot. Can I completely solve your problem? It would be unethical of me to say yes. But can I help you a hell of a lot? Yes, I can. So let's get into the weeds and the reasons why your dog might be reactive, and how that's going to affect whether you can actually get the outcome that whether you can realistically, let's say, get the outcome that you're looking for from, let's say, an online course or time with a one-to-one trainer, or however you're DIYing it, however you're choosing to approach kind of trying to solve this problem. So the first factor is, the reason why your dog is reactive in the first place. There are potentially lots of reasons. And I would say that the most common reason among terriers is that of frustration, right? They're actually quite social, a lot of them, and perhaps you would say overly social. And they've just got to the stage where every dog they see is super exciting, and because they've been restricted on leads and not got what they wanted, then that becomes super frustrating. So you get this dog that's barking and lunging on the end of the lead, which then, that kind of natural tendency to be over-aroused can even tip over into aggression with some dogs. Now, in my opinion, this kind of frustration-based thing is actually the easiest to overcome, and it's the one that you actually probably can, if you do it right, completely solve. If your dog is just overexcited to see other dogs and doesn't really know what to do about them, but actually when they meet them is quite social and not particularly scared or aggressive towards other dogs, they're just a bit unsure what the hell to do about it, and they've got big feelings, and they've ended up in this situation where they're a bit frustrated about the whole thing, that you can work with, right? And thankfully, that is the majority of the reactivity that we see. We can start to change the dog's feelings about seeing other dogs by giving them alternative behaviours. Then we can gradually kind of reintroduce dogs back into their life. And you might actually get to the stage with those dogs where really you never would have known really that they were ever reactive. And you can certainly get to the stage where they can hang around other dogs. Even if you don't quite manage to make it to the last part where they're, super social, and their social skills are really good, you will at least get to the stage with those dogs where they can see dogs and walk past them and not be kicking off. That's totally realistic. The next kind of factor that might play into how easy that is to do is the amount of rehearsal that dog's had of that behaviour. So basically, what I mean by that is, how long have they been doing it? Okay, it's going to be a lot easier to get your dog from reacting to not reacting if they've only been doing it for a short amount of time. So if they're, a lot of them, it's a case they've hit kind of teenage years and their training slipped a little bit and their behaviour slipped a little bit. And if you get on top of that really, really quickly, your chances of turning it round so that you go back to having a totally kind of like quote unquote normal dog is pretty decent. If you wait for 5 years and every single day they go out and kick off another dog and you let them do it more and more and more and more, then just like any long-term habit, it's going to be harder to unpick. Okay, so the amount of rehearsal the dog's had is going to affect it. That's not to say that you cannot make things better for the dog that's been reacting like a mad banshee for 10 years, because you absolutely can. It's just going to be a slightly harder learning curve for that dog than one that's only been doing it for a month, let's say. Then we've got the personality of the dog itself, okay? Just like us, dogs are all different. Some of them are naturally submissive, some of them are naturally more, like aggressive and assertive, some are really bold and confident, some are kind of nervous and worried and anxious type dogs. And you're always going to find it easier to help a dog that is naturally confident and is maybe just a bit misplaced. So that kind of dog is like, I'm really frustrated, I want to see these dogs, I don't know what to do about it, so I'm just going to bark, because that's what comes to me naturally as a terrier. But actually underneath it all, they're actually quite social and that kind of thing. So those are going to be a lot easier to work with, and you're going to get a quicker turnaround than what you would get from a dog who is, really anxious and nervous and worried. Again, none of this means to say you can't help these dogs. You absolutely can. It's just going to affect the speed and kind of like eventual outcome that you get. The next factor we're going to think about in whether you're going to be able to like genuinely solve your reactivity or not is the skill of you as a handler. How much time and effort are you putting into making sure that you are skillful in what you're doing? And this is where dog training is kind of one of those weird things, because we take what is essentially a dog that's struggling and we put them often then with an owner who's also struggling, and we put those two things together and we go, okay, off you go and struggle together, which is weird really, because in basically every other kind of situation where you are let's say like a practitioner, you are helping, like you've got a client or whatever that's struggling and you are an expert and you are solving that problem. Your plumber doesn't come around and say to you, right, let me show you how to do this plumbing, and it's going to take ages, and even though there's water like pouring through your ceiling, I'm still going to take absolutely ages to explain it to you, and you're going to have to get good at it before you can stop that water pouring through the ceiling. Whereas that's kind of what happens in dog training. If you land pretty much like I did with a tricky dog right out the door, and you are a novice owner, you've got some catching up to do. So you are either then obviously stepping down into the road of potentially looking at, sending your dog to an experienced handler or getting an experienced handler to help you out, which is something I would advocate for as long as it's the right situation. And you are looking at skilling yourself up in order to, start to meet the level of experience that's necessary for the type of dog you've got. You don't put a learner driver into a Ferrari straight away, essentially. And then you've got your circumstances in general, like some of us are very lucky, or whether you want to call it luck or, like choice or whatever. But, I personally live somewhere, if I want to, I can pretty much avoid other dogs. I live quite rurally. I can, consciously make an effort to avoid dogs on some walks and then go and find dogs on others so that I can separate my time. I can help my dog mentally. I've got lots of space where I can, give them the opportunity to go and be a dog, all that sort of stuff. Not everybody has that, okay? And if you don't have access to that, you live in a flat in the middle of town and you are stepping out of the door to a street full of dogs every single day, obviously things are going to be trickier and it's going to take you longer to get to the end goal. So what I'm saying is, although that sounds all a little bit doom and gloom, is it shouldn't do, because you absolutely can and will make big improvements to your dog's situation and your situation sort of by proxy in quite a short amount of time if you do the right things. What you've got to understand is that every dog, every situation is a different one, There's all of these different factors, and I haven't even really spoken about kind of health of the dog either, really. There's all of these different factors that go into making your end picture. So you shouldn't be stepping into, and no dog trainer should be taking you on and saying, don't worry, well, I'll 100% fix your problem. We all do it as dog trainers. We get on social media, and I've done it, and you have to get attention, basically. That's what the algorithm says. We make bold statements. This is a game changer for your reactivity. And it's never a lie. It is true. If you do this, it's going to make your life a lot better. And I absolutely don't gatekeep my methods on social media. And when I say something, I mean it. But you've got to make sure that you are not just taking that one statement as a be all and end all, and that you are looking at the picture as a whole, and that is what's going to get you to the maximum amount of success. And every dog is going to be different. Every handler and dog team is going to be different. There are some people, I meet them and I think, I'm 100% confident that if you do what I tell you to do and you apply all this stuff I'm going to teach you, you will come out the other end with a dog that is 95% exactly what you're looking for. In the sense that I'm pretty sure we can get rid of this reactivity and barking. I can see that they're a social dog. If we do it right, we'll get them out the other end and they'll probably be able to meet and greet dogs in the park and not have too many problems with it. And then I see other people and I think, do you know what? My best outcome for you would be just to have your dog under management and some sort of obedience as you walk past other dogs and you're saying to them, you just look at me, mate, and don't you worry about that other dog. And if we can achieve that, I will be over the moon because of where your starting point is. Okay? I think every dog trainer should be able to get a dog to that stage, right? Unless the circumstances are extreme. But most pet dogs that are currently reactive should be able to get to the stage where they can be in the presence of other dogs, perhaps under a little bit of management if necessary, and walking past and being around those other dogs without kicking off. That for me is a baseline in what I teach and what I want you to achieve. And I think if you have that with the dog that is reactive, you can then open that dog's world up a bit, and you can open your world up a bit. And the rest can be a bit of a long game, right? I want to achieve that baseline of being able to hang around other dogs and not kick off within a decent period of time, right? A couple of months. And then after that, I'm playing the long game, and I'm looking at each individual dog and each individual situation, and I'm thinking, right, where do I need to tweak? What are the little individual threads that I can pull to really improve this dog and really help this owner? So that's it. So the answer to can you solve your reactivity altogether, and should you believe bold claims, and is this one method going to fix your entire world for you? Is truthfully probably not. But can we make things a lot better? Should we all be able to achieve this baseline? Yes, I 100% believe we should, and I believe you can all do it. So there's both a little bit of maybe it's not possible, but a whole huge amount of positivity, and you absolutely can make things better for yourself. And that's what you should really be doing. Because the longer you leave it, the harder it's going to be, as the case with the majority of things. So, if you're sat at home looking at your lovely little terrier, and you know that when you step outside the door, they're going to lunge and bark and, kick off at the next dog they see, know that you can do something about it, okay? And do you want to spend the next 10 to 15 years looking at that dog every single day, knowing that that's what your life is going to be like as you step out the door? Or do you want to make a concerted effort, 6 to 8 weeks, maybe 12, right now, put a few other things aside and say, I'm going to do this, and me and this dog are going to overcome this problem? Because I promise you, that's the way to do it. Fabi, thanks for listening along with Terrier School, and we'll be back in next week with some more chat.